Awesome. Well, excited to be here today. And this is something that I've done a number of times, and I think I struggled with at first, and I still do. I think everybody does. Also, you turn on a camera and you're in pitch mode. But there's a lot of tools to help you nowadays that can specifically help you through technology. But also, there's just kind of a framework that I use that I think works really well for me. And so I'm going to take you through the framework. And then I'm going to talk about specific tools that are available, mostly phone apps. You can do a lot with a phone app nowadays. And then some tips and tricks on how to make your videos just look good and look more polished. But I'm looking at this as a 90-second thing, which is probably a good length for anything you do, because people won't always pay attention to long form stuff, especially if you're not there to make them watch it. So the first thing, I'm calling this the 90-second sell video that even you can't mess up. So there's a real simple thing here to doing this. And the first thing is mindset. And really, it's before you go on stage, this is showtime. And so before you do one of these videos, you kind of have to psych yourself up. And you really have to truly believe in what you're selling. And this is before the camera goes on. And I think especially in the educational space or when you're helping other people and teaching them stuff, you have to kind of go, well, my past is their future. And how could I use everything I've learned to have an impact in their lives? And once you kind of get into that mode, I think you get into the switch kind of turns, and all of a sudden you're realizing you could really help people. And that's probably where your energy should come from. Just this sense of like, hey, I could make an impact in someone's life because I can give them a simple trick, or I can give them an insight that they could do something with. And I could save them a lot of time and pain. And so that's just mindset. That's before the camera goes on. When the camera goes on, I think it's always interesting, and every story does this, is to start with a question. And that's how you get viewers to lean forward. You start with a question and it kind of engages them because you're just not telling them everything. You're asking them to kind of fill in the blank. And so it depends on what your subject matter was. But, if I were doing it for this class or something like that, I would go, wow, have you ever had to put together a presentation? You only get 90 seconds to speak. How do you know what to say? How do you know you're going to connect with your audience? But I start asking questions because I think it has people lean forward a little bit and they want answers. And so that's how you create your first engagement. The second thing is then you make it personal. And this is where all the authenticity comes through. And this is where people really start to connect with you as a person. And so I call it talking about your it. And some people say, it's the why or whatever, but it's the it. And the it is that reason why you became an expert in whatever it is you're going to talk about today. And usually there was some moment in your life where all of a sudden you saw this thing in front of you and something clicked and you got super interested in it. And all of a sudden it either became your life's work or this thing that you had a deep, deep curiosity about. And that's kind of your thing. That's your it. And the beauty about the it is it should come across very naturally, and there should be a lot of energy around it. So, one of the, I always thought blank. Then one day, and that was cool. And I thought, how do you do that? And that's what I'm here to tell you about. This is my craft. So basically the it is your craft, the thing that you specialize in, and the thing that has kind of caught you in a way that makes you endlessly curious about the subject matter. So that's the it story. It can be very short. After that, I think you tell them the important things that they're going to walk away with. So there'll be 3 or 4 key learnings from your longer form content, and you kind of outline those things. And that's kind of like the meat of it, but it's really not going to work unless you have the audience engaged. So it's important to lead up to that and then talk about all the benefits. Now, those are the smaller benefits, all those learnings. The thing you want to leave them with is the big benefit. And the big benefit is the time and pain that you're going to save them through them learning what you have to share about your craft. And that's really what they want to walk away with. They want to walk away with this idea that if I take one thing away from that, it could save me so much time and effort. Just one learning from that class. Because when people start to, blend it all together, that's kind of one thing. But usually people take a class for one reason. And it's usually kind of that bigger benefit. And they kind of go, God, if I draw one thing from that class, it could have a huge impact in my life. And then the final thing is, you had to ask for the sale, and not everyone's comfortable with that, but you actually had to ask them to sign up. And this is, Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. They really have to know that, they're important in your world, that you're going to get this great feeling and you're going to be honored for them to be taking your class. And then they have to know that you really care about them, that you really deeply hope that one thing that they walk away with, or 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 things they walk away with, will really impact their life. And that's going to make you feel really good. And so in a way, they hold the controls to actually making you feel good. And people find that that's kind of a powerful place to be. And so then they kind of want to finish the sale in a way, because they want to complete that circle. But it's very important to kind of do that at the end. Not everyone does a close, but it has to come across sincerely, and it has to come across in a way that's, kind of emotive and right. But they have to feel that you really care and that you really can change their lives in a way. And that's kind of the way you end. And so that's kind of the framework of this. And I've written it out, and it's shareable. Taylor will share it later. Now we get into just the tools that you can do this with. And it's the phone. You could do it with a camera, but it adds a level of complexity. And I've seen people do great video blogs just with their phone. So there's a couple of phone apps out there that you can use. A couple are free. I think one costs like $20. And you write your script out, like I kind of outlined it for you, and then you put it in one of these apps. And one of the apps is called Video Teleprompter, and another is called Prompt Smart Pro, and there's others. But basically what they allow you to do is put your script in the phone and then look at the phone and read off the teleprompter. And, that is so much easier than looking around on your desk or doing other things. And after you run through it a few times and you wrote the script, the words are really there just to kind of remind you of what you're about to say. So you could actually do a teleprompter very naturally, especially if you practice a few times. And then when you have it, it gives you a lot of confidence because it's just right there for you and it just prompts you as you go. Now, to use that properly, there's a couple of things that you want to do. When it puts the words on the teleprompter, you want to have as few words up on the screen as possible and towards the right side of the screen, or whichever side you have the camera on, so your eyes aren't going back and forth. If you're looking at a teleprompter, the only giveaway is that you're using a teleprompter is if your eyes go back and forth. So if you have the words stacked, your eyes don't dart back and forth as much, and people won't know that you're on a teleprompter, especially after you've rehearsed this a few times. Make sure you're in landscape mode. Don't do it straight up. It's a tough habit to break for a lot of people, but put it in landscape mode. Once again, put your script to the side that the camera is on. So when you're looking at the script, you're actually looking at the camera, and it looks like you're talking to somebody. It doesn't look like you're looking away. You're looking right at them. The other thing is just to think about lighting. And this sounds like very Hollywood, but it's really not. There's basically 2 sources of light that you'll probably have. You'll have a front light or a side light that could be coming through the window. I'm in a room where there's light coming through the window. And if your background is dark, put a lamp in the background that's not in the frame, that you don't see, that can light the background. And it just kind of gives you a look. And you should kind of study a look. don't have a big hot spot behind you because it's distracting. People's eyes go to like where the brightest light is. So really think about what it looks like on the receiving end, because that's where you get, the sense of professionalism and all that sort of stuff. If there's a lot of clutter in the background, reduce the clutter, do a little art direction, and if you're not great at design or interior decoration, then just make it as minimal as possible. The more clutter there is in the background that's not organized in a cohesive way, it just kind of distracts from your story. And then the final thing is bring a level of energy. You're excited to be in front of these people, and you're going to continue this energy forward as they work with you down the road. So, get fired up. And that's kind of like the full circle. It's that mindset of like, wow, I get to talk to people. I'm going to change their lives. I could help them so much. And then you get into it, and they should feel that energy. And that's kind of it. This is a really short thing, but that's the framework. Those are the tools that you can find through phone apps. And those are kind of like the housekeeping things that you want to do when you're actually filming. And with that, I would love to hear any questions.
Thanks, Robert. That's really helpful. I've been taking a bunch of notes. I also will share what you sent me with the framework and all of this written down with the group. I'm seeing in the chat some back and forth on kind of that storyline that you laid out. What are your thoughts on how that could change and making it and having requests of having it personal, like what you said at the beginning, versus more informational and getting to the meat faster? How do you look at kind of the dynamics of changing that script?
Yeah, I always think that you have to bring an element of personal. I think people always want to put that aside and kind of take themselves out of the equation. However, I do so many films for startups, and I do IPO roadshow videos where they're actually getting in front of Wall Street and they're coming up on their big investment day. And the first thing they start with is personal stories. So it's not something that makes you look small. It's something that makes you look connected to your business. So I would always lean into personal. It's what makes you, you, what makes your company what it is. Now it has to have personal meaning to the business. It shouldn't just be about you, but I would never subtract out the personal. And so I guess the challenge there is like, okay, what's the balance between my personal experience around this and what the company is trying to achieve down the road? And hopefully they align. But I would keep it personal. That's where people are interesting.
Can I elaborate on that a little bit, Robert? I was the one that originally asked that. So I've been pitching, I've been winning big pitch competitions, and I've had my personal story, which I used to never tell, by the way, as part of my pitch. And just recently I pitched again on Clubhouse, which I hardly ever do anymore because they're just brutal. And there are a lot of investor posers on there. So, but there are two guys that I met with a week ago or just last Friday. And one of the guys said, now I get what you're doing. You should have just said that in your pitch. Why talk about your personal story? And I'm like, are you kidding me? Anyway.
Well, like I said, it's a balance. You shouldn't do one at the expense of the other. However, it's usually that personal story that even it says to an investor, like, she isn't going to quit on this because she has skin in the game. And usually that's, your personal story. Now, it shouldn't go on and on, obviously. But, I think it's a proof of a lot of things. It's proof of insight. It's proof of skin in the game. It's proof that you're different than anyone else. And honestly, I think it's a thing that engages you in your storytelling. I think the second you separate yourself from the content in a way where it becomes very kind of matter of fact and pre-scripted, I think it becomes really deadly at that point. So, to me, it's what gets my adrenaline going when all of a sudden I show a little bit of my vulnerability. I think it's kind of like showtime. So it's important for a lot of reasons. But yeah, I agree. You shouldn't go on and on about yourself.
Please just unmute yourself if you got other questions for Robert. Another one that I had, Robert, is do you have any examples of pitch videos like this that would be good for the group to watch or look at?
Yeah, it's interesting. Pitch videos. Yeah, I do. But, mostly what I do is stuff that is pre-recorded to play to an audience as opposed to a person doing a pitch video. But I could probably send some links to, and they are pitch videos. It's these IPO roadshow videos that, it's everybody in the company talking about, what they do, why they do it, why they're going to succeed. And I think they're probably the highest art form of pitch video because they spend a lot of money on these, and it's usually at a really critical time in their company's history. So I could probably put a couple links out there. They're very interesting to watch.
Very cool. Thanks. What other discussion or questions does anybody have for Robert based on kind of what we've been going through? Go ahead, Hallie.
Hi, Robert, really enjoyed that. Hearing about it in terms of the it rather than the why. Taylor, I'd love your notes, so thanks for distributing and sharing them. The question is, my 2 o'clock, I'm East Coast time, call today is with the medical director of an organization. The recruiter called me. We agreed what I was talking about with him in terms of it just went whoosh way over his head. And we agreed that I had to reconnect with a person I hadn't talked with since November to try to figure out where in the organizational framework it might fit better. So that's what I put into the chat. When you're talking with someone, we all know to keep the language and the concepts addressable, deliverable, and accessible to pretty much anyone in the audience. But when you're really trying to target a different vantage point, when do you scale it and adjust the info or presentation to go to the next levels and try to escalate the conversation further than a more general audience?
Yeah, that's a super good point. So when I do this, I'm thinking about the broadest audience, but absolutely, all of a sudden you're going to make it to the next level. You have to figure out who that person is and what their pain is. And there's a lot of ways to do discovery around people. You can go to their LinkedIn, but you could start to get a snapshot of somebody. But when you get in front of one person, you have to figure out their it. And so then you figure out their it and you go, what I have. And they're like, that's exactly what I'm looking for. So yes, it has to go from broad scale. You got in the room. And now once you talk to individuals, you got to do your homework on them. And it's all about them. And it probably isn't a lot about your it, it's their it. And it transitions very quickly. But there's a lot of ways to research people and figure out what makes them tick. But what I found in pitching, it's like, great, great, great. And the second I started talking about myself and started talking about them, all of a sudden their attention span went way up and they became very engaged. So it's all about them at that point.
So follow up, great question. And based on what you just said, you're researching on those people to know what their it is, other than looking at LinkedIn and Googling them. What are some of the best ways that how to find out their secret sauce or what their hidden mission is?
Yeah, a couple of things, and some of it's decoding. One, you could ask people that work with them, what are they really into? What do they love doing? You can go deeper on their interests and things like that, around LinkedIn. You could look at clues behind them, in the world of Zoom. I look at you and I go, wow, she's an avid reader. She looks like she's really into psychology. You can start to create commonality just through basic clues that people leave on the surface. And most people put their it on their chest. They're not hiding it. It's just that most people choose to ignore it because we want to talk about ourselves. So you just kind of have to open the aperture a little bit. But it's standard research. Ask people, look at their social profiles, look at anything they've written. It all gives you clues on what their it is.
Hey, Robert, can I ask a quick question? I actually had a pitch video produced for American Freedom series, and this was mainly for the DoD and four major armed forces. And the guy that actually produced the video for me made it into a type of modular so that he could go in and take out the little specifics and then insert something else into it, so we didn't have to redo the entire video. Is that like what you do or recommend, or is that something special? Or
Yeah, no, if you could do that, definitely. It's all about relevance, right? So when people feel like you're not talking to them specifically, you lose a little bit of their interest. When they feel like you're locked on to their needs, the relevance and their interest goes way up. So yeah, I mean, that's the one thing about video. You should always look at video in a modular way. What are all these resources I'm going to have, and how could I deploy them in different ways? And how could I customize them easily for different audiences? You don't want to redo it, but if you build it into your plan, it's a really smart way to go.
That's very helpful. Thanks, Rob. Tara, maybe you and Rob could answer this, but based on like a business plan competition scenario, like what we've been talking about, are there specifics that we should be looking at in the pitch to incorporate? I mean, I know each competition will have their specific things that they're asking about. And Tara, maybe you could guide us on how a competition, someone who's running a competition looks at these videos.
Yeah.
Are you saying maybe, Rob, that you would want to have multiple videos because you would have to tailor them to these competitions? Or how would the two of you address how best to tailor a 90-second pitch to a competition?
Yeah, I think the first thing is that, especially with what we're trying to do at Boom Startup, we're trying to be inclusive versus setting the bar too high that just becomes exclusive. So we're taking people that have ideas at the back of the napkin. Those people should absolutely pay attention to Rob's whole structure of like writing it out, putting it on the prompt reader, and just delivering it themselves if they don't have it. We did ask for what we called a 90-second product or innovation demo, which should just say like, hey, I'm Tara, here's my great idea. This is why it's great. If you have components to show, then show it. If you don't, then tell a story and make it personal. The trick is that we have on average 15 judges per each category for prelim judging. I guarantee they're going to pay a lot more attention to the video than they are on the pitch decks. I hate to say it, but people hate to read. Videos are over in 90 seconds, and going through a pitch deck takes about 10 minutes. So I'm not saying bomb the pitch deck, but definitely don't blow off the video. And even if it's just you, because you don't have a product, follow Rob's advice on that personal connection as to why it's important to you. And if you can throw in that customization, back to like what Alan was saying of like, hey, I'm stoked to be part of Pitch Up 2. The reason why I want to win this category is because we really do make an impact on impact, or whatever you're going for. Like that would be probably appealing to our judges. Rob, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And in a pitch setting, since you kind of know what setting you're in, you could probably, cut to the chase even more quickly than my setup might be. But I don't know if you have to customize it. I think by the time you get your pitch down around your product, that's your kind of like a long elevator speech. And so I'd be like, wow, you got it. You got it. It shouldn't change that way. Now, if you get in front of different constituencies that you're trying to sell into, then you should probably alter your content. But really, I think one of these 90-second videos is really an elevator pitch that you should probably just have memorized, whether you're on video or not.
Yeah, I completely agree with Rob on this. It is an elevator pitch. If you do have something to show it. If you don't, that's just fine. absolutely fine not to have that there, because I think it's more about the quality of the messaging. And like the other component that Rob said was bringing the energy and the excitement. Huge difference on delivery and reception.
That's good to hear. Thanks. There's some good chat about audio in the chat, so take a look at that. Joel, you've had your hand up. What are you thinking?
With this new era after pandemic, and Karen and Karen and Tara, you both have been party to virtual pitches. My question for Robert is, how are things going to continue to morph with there being pitch by video or augmented pitch in place with the video? Of those two things, what do you think we're going to be seeing more of?
I think video is just coming into its own. So I think we're going to see more and more video. Now, augmented makes a lot of sense, but people are going to be less apt to travel. And they're going to realize you can cover a lot more ground if you could actually capture humanity in your video. That would, be a great replacement for you actually being there. Videos can make people feel things. And the reason we always go in person is because we want to get that personal feeling, that emotion across. Well, I think the next level of video is making people feel something, even when we're not in the room. We're only starting with that. So I think video is going to be a real replacement for, travel and time-based meetings and things like that. Completely.
I've saved so much time. I can get so much more accomplished that I've been working from home instead of traveling all over the place.
Absolutely. And I think we're all getting, a little better at our video presence, but I think we're entering the age of video presence, and that's it. So make the bet on covering a lot of ground with a concentrated story as opposed to trying to cover all that ground yourself.
One note on that front that I found, so I've been working with Kiretsu Forum. It's an angel group around the country. They have 50 plus chapters, and they used to do all in-person chapter pitches where you would have to go travel to each one of the different locales. And the last years, they moved that to all Zoom. And what I'm hearing from them is that they'll probably keep all of their pitches on Zoom and just do in-person meetings for more of the networking and otherwise. So I agree with you. I think that's more of what we will see because it is more efficient. Like I was able to pitch at 7 different chapters in the last month, all from this room without paying a dime for traveling. And it was so much more efficient. So
yeah, Taylor, the problem with that is that like somebody like myself who used to be an opera singer, when I enter a room, I am engaged in high energy. And I put out an energy from my entire body that everyone notices who I am. So you cannot put that apart. I mean, you cannot exude that energy on a Zoom call. So what we were doing scientifically now then it is my development of how we can elevate the human potential by delivering filtered frequencies through the audio and attaching that too. But it is so far off from being in person and engaging someone it is compared to just doing these Zoom calls, because some investors may say, well, okay, he looks like and talks like and acts like and moves like he can actually be a CEO of a large corporation, multi-millions of dollars. Whereas if it's just a Zoom call, are you seeing where I'm going with this? I mean, I love Zoom. I really do. But I still think in person is the way that we can actually feel the other person's energy.
I'll just comment on that. I think that with the pandemic, it's created this new real, because investors aren't going to necessarily just go backwards to we're only doing these in person. they'll probably still use Zoom to screen. They've gotten used to doing deals by not ever meeting the founder. And that would have been unheard of 5 years ago. Would have never imagined it. Now they've been forced to do it. And it's like, yeah, we can actually make that work. And then maybe we supplement it with, if we start getting really serious, let's send somebody out to go hang out with this founder and see if there really is a good fit personally, and make that part of our due diligence rather than our screening process. And I really think that's where things are going.
Yeah, the reason why that this is so new, so constant right now is I ride my bicycle between 30 and 40 miles every morning. And this morning I was out at the lake doing loops around it. Guy came up next to me, started talking. The guy's a venture capitalist. And we were talking about all this kind of stuff that whenever I talked to him about what I was doing, he was like, wow, you are really passionate about what you're doing. Do you have a deck? I mean, he asked me for my deck, but it was because we were physically in contact and he could hear it, feel my voice while we were just riding next to each other.
Yeah,
But,
I agree. That's definitely powerful when you're in person. I saw Robin and Jessica, you were nodding your heads when Jeff was talking, and would love to hear your thoughts on that, just based on what you're doing as in your experience and what you've seen as well.
Yeah, I think, for our accelerator programs, we've had to make quite a few adjustments where we've had hybrid options. We've also ran in person. We've also ran virtually as well. And we actually have one program every year that is, even before the pandemic, is completely virtual. And it's called Techstars Anywhere. That program has the highest amount of applications that we receive. And it's due to an accessibility standpoint. So I think when you're thinking about, what is going to be the best fit for me for the type of experience that I want, and the type of connections, how I make those connections, whether that's in person or virtual, the best part is that you get to decide that, right? I think sometimes when I speak with entrepreneurs, they're always thinking of it from the perspective of like, I'm trying to sell myself to you as the accelerator program, but it's also the opposite for us. We're trying to validate ourselves as being the best option for you. Investors are doing the same. And you just have to find alignment in what that relationship looks like. So you have the option too to say, maybe a virtual relationship isn't going to be the best fit for me in the long term. So because hopefully, as you're working with your investor, it's not just 3 to 5 years, it's going to be for the lifetime of your company. And you just have to think about that perspective. So I say, whatever works for you. I know that's super general, but it's going to be your relationship that you're maintaining at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I was going to say that, even pre-pandemic, Alan, I mean, that's like a serendipitous moment, right? That's like a unique moment in terms of connecting with that VC the way that you did. And, like in person will never be replaced. Like we all know that. But I feel that there's just greater opportunities to connect, period, from a virtual standpoint, right? Taylor being able to pitch at those 7, different, that would just never happen before. So I feel that the opportunity to connect with as many people as possible, or as many VCs as possible, or, to really open up that opportunity, virtual has allowed us to do that. And as Jeff said, it's like you start there, and depending upon what that relationship looks like, I think that, you will always have an opportunity to move it forward and then to finally meet in person. But I don't really think that, just the opportunities that have been created because of this crazy pandemic, I think has been actually quite positive. But I will say, like, nothing will replace in person.
Yeah. Hallie, you said you had a question, and then I think timing wise, we're getting close. We're past our 11:45 typical, but we can go until noon. I like the conversation. I think it's helpful. So Hallie, what question do you have?
Thank you. So many of you know that I'm a doctor who specializes in rehab medicine, particularly hands-on healing. So talk about intangibility of touch in this kind of world. What I'd appreciate is, and this is a real heartfelt invitation, I'm trying to figure out how to break through this virtual wall that we have, because being able to give people an experience of what touch is all about is one of the things that we crave and need. And I'd really appreciate your contact with me through LinkedIn is a good way to start. A lot of us are already connected, to try to figure out how to break through this divide, because a lot of people need, crave, and deserve to have hands-on healing work, and they don't have any access to now. And I have a way to document it as well as deliver it differently. And that's what really is my it. So I'm inviting you to help me make it your needs too. I'll put my info in the chat. Thanks.
Cool.
That was a 90-second pitch, Hallie.
Yeah.
I'm getting it.
Yeah, use Zoom as your foil. I mean, you say touch and here we are, virtual. So yeah, you could push off of the artifice of Zoom to make your point everywhere.
Yeah, I'm doing telemedicine for people with brain injury in Utah while I'm sitting in New York and developing all sorts of new technology ways. That's why I'm so glad Alan joined me here in this, because changing the ways that we relate to our information makes the information in touch for us.
Cool.
Well, thanks.
Thanks.
Robert, do you have any parting words or suggestions that you would share with the group? And then also, what would be the best way for anyone interested in talking to you more to contact you?
Yeah. So first and foremost, I'm Rob at Story Machine Films. And we could send out that document. It has our URL at the bottom, but Rob at storymachinefilms.com. I think secondly, there's this discussion of video, and I just kind of go back 2,000 years where first there was the spoken word, and then the written word was very controversial for about 500 years. Then we had the Enlightenment, and the printed word was the word. And now the video word is the word. And we're just entering this video era. And it's early days. Maybe it started at the beginning of the last century. I don't know, maybe film, but video has just begun. It took the written word 2,500 years to kind of reach its zenith. Video is going to rewrite how we think, how we communicate, how we sell, how we do everything. And it's early days. So I always just ask people to imagine something very different than what they're experiencing now, because this isn't it. It's going to get a lot better.
Very cool. Well, thank you. This is super helpful. I would suggest anybody reach out to Rob who has some more questions. Check out what he's doing. And thank you, Rob, for your time. This is fantastic.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate you joining the group today.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks all. We'll see you next Tuesday. Appreciate it. Good to see you all.
Bye-bye.